I grew up in the DC area. I didn't grow up in York. My dad was curator of herpetology at the Smithsonian. His specialty was snakes. He had a friend whose name was Jay Savage. And Jay came to dinner one night at our house. We sat in the dining room, not the kitchen. I have 5 siblings. We would sit in the kitchen almost every night, all of us, and have dinner. Pretty close quarters. It was a good sized house, but 7, 8 people around the table. It was pretty crowded. We weren't poor, but there were a lot of us. And we had a rule in our house that if you wanted something to put on your bread, you had to take the butter test, which was a piece of bread, one had margarine, one had butter. If you could tell the difference, you could eat butter. If you couldn't tell the difference, you had to eat margarine. So Jay Savage was one of my father's colleagues. He had, in Costa Rica, found the golden frog. It had been featured on the cover of National Geographic a couple years earlier, and sat down to dinner and said, "Pass the butter, please." I was about 8, and I said, "Oh, you have to take the butter test." My father said, "Jay Savage doesn't have to take the butter test." And he was a great sport and said, I'll take the butter test. And he passed it. I passed it as well. I could tell the difference between butter and margarine, but when I was a kid, I actually preferred margarine. I cannot explain it. Years later, I was working as the editor of geology and oceanography for Prentice Hall textbooks. And my counterpart in geography was publishing a book on environmental geography. And during a sales presentation to the sales force, he says, turn to this page and read this story. And it was a story about Jay Savage and him finding the golden frog 40 years, 50 years earlier, filled with regret that what it had fostered was an enormous industry of travel to these locations that increased air traffic, was he was probably in his 80s or 90s at the time, contributing to the decline of the atmosphere around the Earth, and that he actually was wishing that he had not been so fortunate in getting the publicity that he had gotten all those years before. My dad died when I was 14, died of cancer. He had used formaldehyde from the time he was a kid to hold the specimens. My grandfather was a doctor and happily provided him with formaldehyde. 10 years after he died, it turned out that it was a carcinogen. They didn't know it at the time. I can't tell you how funny it was to me to be sitting professionally being like, Jay Savage, that's the guy I made take the butter test when I was a kid. How does this happen? Thank you.